color contrast got their attention. Organizational success with accessibility. Good day, everyone around the world attending AXCON. I'm excited to be here with you. My name is Patrick Sturdivant. I'm a lead software engineer with USAA. I've been with our organization for 34 years, all in the IT space. Did over 20 years as a developer, and have spent the last 9 years in the digital accessibility testing area, where I still primarily work. A little bit about me. I am totally blind since birth, no vision for the last 40 years. My personal pronouns are he, him, his. Today, I am sporting a really sharp looking navy blue digital equality as my jam shirt. I am coming to you from San Antonio, Texas. I'm sitting up in my library. And for those of you who cannot see, my background is a bunch of shelves, bookcases full of books, technology, toys, everything it takes for me to work remotely. Um, Given all of that, let me turn it over now to Debbie to introduce. Debbie is my co-presenter.
Thanks, Patrick. Hi, I'm Debbie Schultz. I'm a senior graphic designer, and I've been with USAA for 18 years. My work as a designer has always been employee facing rather than customer facing, and this has included designing internal websites, posters, presentations, digital billboards, all visible from within the company. I've been working as an employee accessibility advocate for a couple of years. I met Patrick 2 years ago and teamed up with him on this journey that we're going to share with you today. This role as an accessibility advocate started at home because I have a 16-year-old son who has an intellectual disability and is nonverbal. I'm the only parent that he has, and I've been his advocate for 16 years. So now I have an opportunity to use that experience and take that passion for equality and inclusion to my workplace and use it to advocate and make a difference for employees with disabilities. So, what are we going to be talking about today? First, we'll talk a little about our company, which is USAA, in case you aren't familiar with it. And this will give you some context around the story that we're going to share. Then we're going to talk about the challenge of employee accessibility and how that differs from customer accessibility. And then we'll also talk about how it's similar. Then we're going to give a 3-step process of where to start with employee accessibility. We'll share our personal story of how we started and how it grew. And then we'll share some insights that we learned along the way. We hope that what we share will perhaps introduce you to the idea of full inclusion for employees, or maybe it will give you a few things to think about or inspire you to take a step toward greater inclusion for employees at your company. So now Patrick is going to tell you a little about USAA.
Thanks, Debbie. For those of you who may not be familiar with USAA, it stands for United Services Automobile Association. We are a financial services company dedicated to the military market. We're a Fortune 100 company, and I'm excited next year, in 2022, we'll celebrate a 100-year anniversary. So that's a little bit about USAA. Let's move into our next slide, and let's start talking about this topic. And let's look at the challenge, which is to apply quality digital accessibility to internal content. And when we talk about that, we're talking about employee facing. And, not everyone, I don't think, has thought about what that really means. And that means that we're looking at internal documents, Excel spreadsheets, Word docs, PDFs, websites that are internal, that are developed, potentially websites that are in the cloud that the employees use, software on your desktop, mobile apps that your company may have for the employees to use, kiosks to order food in the cafeteria, digital billboards or digital products that guide people or provide information in large buildings. It can pertain to anything that an employee has to interface with to do their job And just think about how many different software applications a large corporation may have. That is the scope, and it's a big one, but we're going to show you how to scope it down to a more manageable size so that it's not so overwhelming. So now if we go to the next slide, I want to just take a moment to kind of compare and contrast the difference between customer accessibility and employee accessibility. Many of you probably are working in the customer accessibility space, and that's a big job. I know because I've been doing accessibility testing for USAA for the last 9 years full time, and I still have a lot of work to do to improve that. Well, I think we all do because everyone knows that accessibility is a journey. We never finish. But if you look at the customer side, we're looking at your website, we're looking at emails you may send your customers, uh, statements that may be sent via a PDF document or that they can log into and look at their statements as PDFs. Probably looking at maybe a mobile app that you may offer them. So, the different ways that they can reach out and receive services from your company. A lot of work because most big companies have large sites, but that's basically it. I may have forgotten one or two things, but that's the customer side. Now, if you kind of look on this slide at the employee side, I've already kind of covered it. There is technology everywhere because what does business love? To do things more efficiently, and that means technology. So most people, whether they're in the IT space, the financial space, it doesn't matter what space you're in. If you're in a large company, you've got technology at you all day long to be efficient. So if you look at the number of things that the employee faces that may need evaluating for good WCAG standards, you'll see a big difference between the customer and the employee. But don't worry, we know this is a journey and we know we have some challenges and we're going to help understand how best to start working at that. And I'll turn it over to Debbie to talk to you about that.
Okay, so we have a three-step process that we think works well that we're going to share. This process takes the overwhelming scope of employee accessibility that Patrick was talking about and breaks it down into manageable steps. The idea is to start small and take little steps to move forward, with the overall goal being to move forward. And even if it's just a little progress, that counts. A little progress is better than nothing. When I first became an employee accessibility advocate, I wanted to make big strides all at once. I was gung ho, but employee accessibility starts with a change of mindset and it requires thinking differently. And it truly is a culture change, which takes time. This is why we take small steps and we recognize those as progress. The first step is to select an accessibility heavy hitter. There's color contrast, keyboard navigation, and unlabeled graphics. There is a learning curve involved with each of these heavy hitters. We suggest choosing one. To tackle all three at one time would be a very steep learning curve. And it would most likely involve those who are unfamiliar with what accessibility even means, much less learning the ins and outs of each of these three items. The next step is to apply that to something that will have an impact on employees. Maybe you want to start with software applications. If your systems have a lot of accessibility issues and you don't have the funding to correct them, maybe you just focus on a newly purchased application or on one that you're developing in-house. It would be time consuming and expensive to go back and correct the issues in every system. Internal websites are another option. Maybe you select a website for a particular department or a particular process. Another option would be internal documents, such as presentations, slides, emails, and PDFs. Just remember to start small. You don't have to tackle the whole mountain all at once. Once you determine what aspect of accessibility to start with and what to apply it to, you want to select a showcase product. Select a product that has a broad reach and will give you a high return. This is going to narrow your focus so that you have something measurable. It allows you to show results. You want to show an improvement in the employee experience. So, what product will allow you to do that? This product is what will get conversations started. Leaders will look to it and say, see what we did with this? It gives something specific and a very measurable goal. Now, let's take a look at how we did this at USAA. Our accessibility heavy hitter was color contrast. For those who aren't familiar with it, I'll give a quick example. This slide has some white text on a dark blue background. There's a high contrast between the text and the background. If the text were black instead of white, it would be hard, if not impossible, to read against the dark blue. Color contrast guidelines ensure that there's enough contrast for information to be seen. This slide also has some text that is yellow and bolded. This color also has a high contrast against the dark blue. And for those who can't distinguish between the white and the yellow colors, the text is bolded. So it doesn't rely on color alone to show what information we want to stand out. Color contrast is important for those who have vision issues and are colorblind because they're able to see information that may otherwise be unreadable. Color contrast was our accessibility heavy hitter. We applied it to internal documents that were only seen by those within our company. Our showcase product was a company-wide document that was posted on an internal website that all employees had access to. This diagram may help with following our journey that took some twists and turns along the way. It's simply an outline of this story that started with a small project and grew quickly. It soon involved other departments and other projects that were affected by our applying color contrast to that one document. This document was posted on an internal website and it was owned by one of our VPs. The VP decided he wanted it to be fully accessible. This had stemmed from some conversations that he'd had with Patrick. He wanted it tagged for screen readers and to meet color standards for accessibility. And he wanted it to be a model for other documents. The document was posted on the website and it was listed as being fully accessible. When I saw it, I realized it didn't meet the WCAG standards for color accessibility. Well, the website had an option to provide feedback, and so I did. I let them know that it might be alt tagged correctly, but it wasn't color accessible. They then gave me an opportunity to join Patrick and one other coworker to bring it up to standards. Now, like most companies, we have a brand color palette. When we began working with it, we quickly learned that it had some accessibility issues. When combining colors for text and background, there were several instances of very low contrast. Then we learned something else. We found out that we had two different color palettes within the company. One was for internal use, and one was for external use. To make it even more complicated, different departments owned each color palette. The Chief Design Office managed the colors for external use. These colors were designed to meet color accessibility standards. The Brand Marketing Department managed the colors for internal use. These were the colors that we were using in our document. So our first challenge was to get the two departments together and persuade them to use the same color palette, the one with the colors that could be easily combined for accessibility. Once they agreed upon one palette, we were able to make our document color accessible. So we achieved the goal we set out to do. But it had already begun to grow into a life of its own. Even though we updated the document, we couldn't post it on the website until the new color palette had been rolled out. Before that could happen, there were other PDFs on the brand website that needed updating with the new colors. There was also on that same brand website a PowerPoint template that the CEO chief of staff owned. So it was a domino effect of changing one thing that led to something else. What started with our document now included a color palette, several brand PDFs, and a CEO chief of staff template. Now keep in mind, we didn't have a policy for employee accessibility. We didn't have a process to follow or a program to refer to. We started from scratch. We didn't even have a budget. We had to influence others that this was worth doing without having any policy to refer to. We had to be willing to jump in at any time and do the work ourselves because we didn't have a project team allocated to us. We had to request help from others who also felt that employee accessibility was important. And this is where relationships made all the difference. Brand marketing and the design office didn't have anyone with availability to update the brand PDFs. So we did the work ourselves. We also needed to get the brand website updated on how to use those new colors for accessibility. Again, we wrote the content ourselves and we worked with brand to get it posted on their website. We worked with the CEO chief of staff to update their PowerPoint template with the colors and to add guidelines to it for using the colors for accessibility. We worked with others to create training videos. We designed and developed an internal website on color accessibility and how to use our color accessibility tool. So now we had 3 departments outside our own involved. And along the way, we were educating everyone we talked to about color accessibility. We had a lot of things going on at the same time that were all leading up to a major rollout, a new company color palette, the document that started all of this, brand PDFs, a PowerPoint template from the CEO chief of staff, the brand website, and an internal training website with videos. We had to ensure that this all rolled out together. And we had to think of how we were going to get the word out about the rollout. We used several communication lines that began with our VP. When someone from the top speaks, people listen. He sent several emails and newsletters out to his organization. He spoke in department meetings about accessibility and the colors and the documents that were now color accessible. He talked with other leaders who in turn also began talking about color accessibility. So this started with one document, but it quickly grew and it involved 4 departments working together toward one goal: color accessibility for employees. It has continued to grow, and employee accessibility continues to gain more visibility in our company. Presentations in our organization, which has about 2,800 employees, are required by our department head to be color accessible. More people are speaking up about having color blindness. People are more open to talk about accessibility in general. The more people speak up, the more others feel comfortable talking about it. People will now ask, is this color accessible? What do we need to do to make this color accessible? People feel comfortable speaking up in a meeting and saying, I can't see that. I can't see what you're talking about. Because they realize that it's okay to say something and that they will be heard and that something will be done about it. This is changing our culture for the better. And that brings us back to the 3-step process and the baby steps. This is a culture change and it takes time, but it makes the culture more inclusive for everyone. Now, Patrick is going to talk about a few things that we learned along the way.
Thanks, Debbie. We learned a lot and we continue to learn a lot. Let's look at some of these points. You really need to know who is for accessibility. Accessibility is a people game, and you've got to know who you can work with. And that does take time. It takes, you see here, the second item on this list, build relationships. It's all about building relationships, and sometimes relationships are built and they're great very quickly, and sometimes they take time. Sometimes you build relationships and you immediately click, and accessibility is important. And sometimes it takes time for them to get to know you, for them to understand what accessibility is, for them to get it comfortable with it, for them to get excited about it. And I've had it over. I've been talking about accessibility really for like 14 years at USAA, and it's all over the place. But I get so excited when I meet a new person, and that could be a person on the phone talking to our military. It could be a developer. It could be an executive, and there's usually some type of a relationship that they get interested in about accessibility. They have a family member with a disability. They have a neighbor with a disability. They know something, and they start to hear the story about what we're doing to become more accessible, and they quickly want to help in their way. And all people who want to help accessibility are greatly valued. So building those relationships, knowing who's for it is going to be key, because this journey takes a team of people around your enterprise to make it happen. Now, finding a sponsor is also goes along those lines of relationship building. A lot of executives, they're very busy people, and they get it, they understand it. Some of them want to get more involved than others. Some of them want to be known as a leader in this space, and those are the ones you work with and get them to sponsor the concept, the idea, the program, whatever it is you're trying to make better. That's your sponsor. And for us, it was our VP who said, I want to start small, and I want to show growth. I want to show progress, and this is what we're going to do, and here's what I want. And he was willing to back us up. And because of that, we had support. Now, if you look at this next item, the tone and messaging. Messaging is very important. Once you have those relationships built, you've got a sponsor, you're working on this project, and you show progress. Get your sponsor, your executive, to message the organization both up and down. They need to let the organization know, I I support this. This is excellent work. Look what we've been able to accomplish. They also need to let their boss know above them what they're doing and how this is going to impact the organization for the better, so that they can start sharing it at higher levels and then move across the organization. Because as you know, with accessibility, we want it everywhere. We don't want to hide it. We don't want to hug it. We want everyone to be involved, and that's how you do it, by moving up and down, communicating. Showing progress is really important. Leaders love to show progress, and you know, doing this as long as I've done, sometimes I, in the past, would get a little disappointed, a little sad, because I would want things to happen just like that, instantly, magically. And I've learned they don't happen instantly and magically and quickly. I've learned patience, and I've learned to celebrate the small things, the small successes. And that's why taking a large problem and breaking it apart and trying to challenge one part of it or one piece of it is so important, so that you can mark that off your list and show progress. Show those baby steps, and continue to always move forward, and don't get discouraged. Another thing that we learned was how important good tools and information is, because you're going to be asking people to do things that they just don't know anything about. And no matter how many presentations you give, no matter how many people you talk to, you can't talk to everyone. Having a great website with a lot of good information to explain to them the basics of the concept you're trying to push is very important. Also, having the tools for them that they can get access to for free, meaning they don't have to get their boss to agree to buy that license. Just making the accessibility tools available to everyone, along with the great information on how to use them and why, that is really key. So that's another thing we learned. That kind of segues into the next item on develop a website. So having easily found information that can continuously gets updated, that they can understand, that there's a feedback mechanism, that they can, we actually use a wiki system where they can put in comments and say, I don't understand this, or how do I do this, or why is this working this way? We see that feedback, we can respond with answers, and everyone visiting to learn can learn from other people's experiences. That's very important. Continue to spread the message. We that's our mission is to continue to talk about why accessibility everywhere, whether it's your customers or your employees, is important. That message can never get repeated enough. There's always a new person who needs to have a little bit of information, enlightenment of why this is so important. And then the last thing, patience. I've had to learn a lot about patience, and I can tell you that some goals that I've got, I've been able to accomplish in a few months. Sometimes it takes me a year, and I have other goals that take years. But you got to keep at it, and you have patience, and you never can give up. So, Debbie, are there anything on this list of things we learned that you would like to comment on?
I think you covered everything, Patrick. Thanks.
Okay, well, we are now excited to take your questions and help you learn a little bit more. So we'll turn it back to Ali.
All right, Debbie and Patrick, thanks for that awesome presentation, from communication strategies to taking initiatives. I think just real kudos to you and the team for just taking such a proactive approach and becoming accessibility champions in your space. We do have a question, and read it off here. When dealing with external clients, in the case of someone wanting a website and already having branding guidelines, do you have any suggestions for trying to let clients know that their branding may not be accessible? How should that be adjusted when it's not the company itself identifying this?
I would say the best way is to give them real examples of how improving accessibility will help their client to reach out to more people. An excellent example of is color. But the reason why, I'll be very honest with you, W, jump in. Color is kind of an easy thing to sell, and you're probably going to think that's a strange thing for a blind guy who can't see colors to say. But it is. We live in a sighted world for the most part. Not everyone has the unique talents that I have to do all these great things in the dark. But color and the visual is something that you can put in front of someone and explain very quickly and easily. So that's where I would probably start, is to try to help them understand and then grow it from there into other aspects of how accessibility applied to their website will help their customers, both current and growing customers. I hope that answered the question. And Debbie, feel free to add in.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a relatively easy fix when you're dealing with the colors. I mean, a lot of people might disagree with me on that, but relatively speaking, if you're looking at adding alt tags to everything and all these working with headings and whatnot, making sure that the screen readers can read something, it's pretty simple to understand the color, and making sure that it meets those contrast ratios and not just relying on the color alone. There's some pretty simple basic rules that I think a lot of people can easily understand. So I do agree that is a good place to start.
Great, thank you both. Next question that came in. Can you talk about any opposition you encountered during your journey and how you overcame that challenge?
Opposition. Really, most people, their only opposition was, do we have time for this? Do we have to do this? Does this apply to us? They're look at it as a good thing or a bad thing. They're so used to being told you will do accessibility for customer facing, and they know that it's ingrained in them. They know that they have to do it for the customer. So when we come along and we start talking about employee accessibility, it's not so much that they have an opposition, but it's like, Oh, wait a minute. What did you say? Employee? Are you sure? We always do it for the customers. We don't do it for the employees. So educating them about the culture shift, the change, how we're moving forward, how important inclusion of all different types at USAA is so important. And that now, since we've gotten so good at customer accessibility, we're going to continue on the journey and start doing it for employees. That's the thing. Um, and they've had to adjust a little bit because, now they have to spend a little bit more time thinking about accessibility in this space. So that's really only been the only opposition is that now they kind of have to switch gears and think about it in this space also. Debbie, have you seen any other opposition?
Yeah, I mean, it is a different way of thinking. And I think just naturally, especially when it comes to work, people will fight change. Like they want to understand, why is this important? Why do I have to do this? Do we really have that many employees that are going to benefit for this? Is it worth that trade-off of me putting in this much time and learning this? There, like I said, there's a learning curve to it. So you have to learn it and then start adding it to your daily process with your work and looking at how many people this affects. And it's again goes back to just the education and the culture change and starting those conversations, and getting people to talk about it and understand why it is important. And it's not just for the employees that we may have right now. This is for all employees in the future. So in the future, if we hire, we may have a lot more people that use screen readers who are employed at the company. They're going to benefit from this. This is long term.
So let me just add to that. That's where messaging from the top helps. And that messaging can't be just one time. They have to hear it over and over again from the top, and it slowly sinks in to them that, oh, that's right. We keep hearing now that employee accessibility is important. That's the message we got from the VP or the EVP. So that helps. And employee accessibility work, I look at, like Debbie said, it's futuristic. We need it now. We know we can't have everything. We're going to slowly work on it. But the goal is in 10 years or 15 years, this will be old and we'll be really good at employee accessibility. And what I like to say is, since I'm not one of them, all of those millennials who will then be my age in your 50s, who will start to have some vision problems, some hearing problems, they will appreciate the work that we did now to do accessibility, get it into the employee side, so that in the future, they will have no problem seeing things, hearing things, working with things because of the work we do now. We know accessibility takes a lot of time, it's a journey. So you better not wait on it. You need to start because it will take time.
Well said, and a great segue into our next question around VP and sponsorship. Did you approach your VP for sponsorship? If you did, how did you go about building that relationship?
Well, I had to first know him. I met him in a meeting, and he started to sound kind of favorable to the concept of accessibility. He was very new to the company, and we were briefing him on what we do, and he seemed interested and eager. And he talked a little bit about his accessibility experience at his prior company. And so, if you know me, I have been known to not fear anyone or anything, and I will do crazy things. And I have been known to ask to speak to our CEO. So it was very natural for me to go up to our VP's admin and say, I'd like to meet with the VP. And next thing you know, it's like, okay, uh, you'll do lunch with him because that's the easiest way for me to get you in with him. I said, I'll do whatever it takes. So I started having lunch with him once a month, and we started having conversations and planning. And the next thing you know, we're talking about, he's asking me, what are the three big things that you could change if I could help you? And I said, color contrast, alt tagging, and keyboard navigation. So that's kind of how it started. And I still meet with him regularly. And I'm excited for us to get all vaccinated so I can get back into the office so I can wander the hallways, bump into executives, and start conversations and continue that conversation and influence, because I do a lot of that.
Yeah, it's all about the relationships. Patrick and I could have never done this without the relationships with other people in the company who feel that this is important and that it matters. So that lays the foundation for everything. If you take one thing away from today, start building relationships if you haven't already. Find out who is for accessibility, who is for employee accessibility, and build
And,
those relationships and start from there.
and when you don't find the right person right away, keep on going. Just keep going. Keep talking to other people, and you'll find that person at a high level or at a low level. It doesn't matter where, because you'll move up and down as you start to grow it. So just keep plugging along and keep talking to people.
And while this question is not here, I'm compelled to ask. You had the benefit of possibly being on site in the event of where we are today, where we're mostly remote. Given if that was the circumstance, would you approach it a different way?
It would be a little bit harder if I did not have the vast experience with and list of relationships already pre-built that I can go to today. Today, I can go to several people and say, "Hey, we got this new executive, and I think they need to know about accessibility. Can you put in a good word for me?" And so I can do that. But I also know a lot of the admins, and that's another great way. Chat with admins and say, "Do you think your boss would like to hear about what we're doing for our disabled customers?" What
Perfect.
admin is going to say no? "Well, yeah, I think he'd like to know about disabled," or "Yeah, I think she'd like to know about what we're doing for our disabled customers." And yeah, I can get you 30 minutes, and that's what you do. And now we're going to have to do it on Zoom. I'm confident here in a few months I'll be back in the office. I have been kind of laying low because of COVID, uh, but that's not going to stop me. If I felt like we weren't going to be back in the office until next year, then I would definitely start reaching out on Zoom and doing it that way.
Great. Thanks for that, Patrick. Next question. Do you apply your accessible color palette to printed documents as well?
We
Debbie, I'll let
do.
you take that. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, we do. When we started this, my design team made it a part of our process so that whether we're doing digital or print, it's going to be color accessible. It's just what we call baked into the process. It's not something that we think about at the end of, oh, yeah, let's design this the way that we want. Oh, yeah, and is it accessible? If not, okay, yeah, let's just fix a few things. So we bake it into the whole design that we're doing along the way. And that applies to digital and print.
Great. Can you speak more on how your workflow for employee accessibility differs from customer accessibility? Does one team work to create accessibility for both employees and customers?
Well, I work on a team called Enterprise Accessibility Office, and it's kind of a new merger, and we are slowly figuring all that out. But we do know, as I would hope many people know, that good quality accessibility, whether it's facing your customer or facing your employee, is the same standards, same tools, same principles, same guidelines. So we do follow a lot of the practices in procedures that we do for our customers, and we're slowly transitioning them to the employee side. Sometimes there are some differences. Like I said, there's more technology for the employees. You can actually, sit down with an employee who's having an accessibility issue. Sometimes it's very hard to sit down with a customer and do that. You also have employees who use different types of assistive tech that we have to troubleshoot with specific software. Maybe talk with the vendor of the product that employee needs to use. So there are a lot of similarities and there are some differences, because you are actually working with people who have a disability who are trying to do their job. And sometimes we have to work on that accessibility for them.
Great. We'll keep rolling here. When your company has a strong accessibility initiative in one area, but you are in a different area, and accessibility is termed as lower priority, even though it should be a priority across the board. How do you gracefully try to affect change there?
You don't give up. You keep showing the benefit. You keep influencing. You keep you must have patience, because there are some things that I would love to have that I know I'm not going to get this year or next year, and I can't look at it as a defeat. It's just like, okay, that's not high on the priority list. But we are fortunate to have a very strong sense of inclusion at USAA, and that continues to get stronger and stronger. Like I said, across all aspects of inclusion, not just disabled. So that works to our advantage. And we prioritize and try to attack the most important things up front, and just realize we can't do it all, but we're willing to listen to anyone who's got a concern, and try to help. And prioritization is really the key there.
Yeah, it's speaking up and having patience, but continuing to speak up and talking to others about the importance of it, and just being patient, because you're going to hit a lot of walls. A lot of people aren't going to get it. They're not going to understand. But along the way, you just reach out and you just keep the conversation going. Just keep the conversation going, and then another person will bring it up, and that's how it grows. That's how more people start talking about it and realizing how important it is. So I would say just keep speaking up, and
It,
be patient, but keep
it,
going. That's why
it,
we're talking about those baby steps. It seems small, but you're moving forward. You're making some progress, and every little step of progress does count.
and realize that you will start to develop a reputation. And I know this firsthand, because I noticed a little accessibility problem with a web page you used to do some work with logging in to and making some changes to some security issue for employees to update groups and just general stuff. So I pinged a person that I knew who was also a VP, because it's like, okay, who can help me with this? I want to make sure that we're available, because this is employee facing and important. So he connected me to the right area and said, help Patrick. And there was some email exchanges, and one of his responses back was, I had to laugh when I saw it. Make sure you get Patrick that report. If he doesn't get that report, he will not let go, and you will not be happy. Just get it to him. Because this VP knows I may drop something for a few months, but I will not forget. And eventually I will ping him back, or I'll see him in the hallway and I say, you know what, we still haven't made any traction on that. Can you help? So he knows already. His people need to work with us. So you will get a reputation. So be careful when you're building those relationships and you're working with people. You've got to be firm but fair, and you got to know when to back off and come back another day, because you definitely don't want to get to the point where people avoid you. That is not the way to do it. You've got to know when to just relax and say, okay, we're going to continue this conversation another day. I may not tell them that, but I tell myself internally, I'm not done. We're going to keep plugging away, and we'll revisit this, and we'll continue to improve.
Because people
Patience.
know it's the right thing to do. It's just, I
Right.
think, getting past those initial objections of, do we really have time for this? Do we really need to do this? Because, I mean, people really do deep down know, yeah, we should be doing this.
It's all
Right.
back to prioritization.
I know we've had a couple questions in this space, so maybe I'll follow up with that. How big does empathy play a part in that too, in selling that?
I think it's huge. We're kind of spoiled a little bit, because we've been on the empathy bandwagon for many, many, many years to get good quality accessibility for our customers. So I'm not saying everyone is perfect and doesn't need any help with empathy, but we've got a great, I guess, to say, baseline of employees that already have that empathy for this space because of the work we've done for the customer. So it's easy now to translate right into employee, because they get it. And as a matter of fact, when we started this journey, we weren't quite sure where we were going, and it was just a concept and an idea. So many people would come to me and say, well, Patrick, this customer accessibility, that stuff is great. We know we got to do it, but when are we going to start doing employee accessibility? And I say, I'm working on it. Give me some time. We're going to get there. So they were already coming to me saying, when are we going to do employee? So that was exciting. I didn't have to a lot of times even say anything. They were wanting to know when we're going to do the employee side.
Great. Next question. Great information, Patrick and Debbie. Do these efforts extend into the standardization of assistive technology for your employees? And did you allow employees to test the changes that were being made?
Yes and yes. So assistive tech does play into this, and I kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. It's a little bit different in the employee space because when you're dealing with customer accessibility, it's just meet the standards, make sure you do a lot of good testing because you don't know what the tech is that the customer is going to use. On the employee side, we do know about it. We have a approved list of assistive tech. We're working on processes and on how to standardize bringing in new assistive technology. We do take advantage of our employees who use it to get their feedback. I'm always pinging different people who use different technology. Hey, we got this new great thing for captioning. Can you try it out? Or hey, what do you think about this with JAWS? Or do you like the new version of JAWS? Are we having any problems? So assistive tech is an important part. Lean on your architects for the assistive tech. They're a big help in that space, especially when it comes into bringing in new assistive tech. They can be a big help, and they need to understand it. And since the architects are normally at the front of technology and looking at what new tech is coming into the enterprise to be put in front of the employees, another really important thing, I'm glad you brought this up, is to have good relationships with your architects, because when they're sitting in their meetings on Zoom talking to new vendors about new technology, they need to be saying things like, so is this product accessible? How will our disabled employees use this product? Are you going to be able to meet WCAG standards? So architects are another great resource for people who you need to help understand why it's important. And they're sharp guys. That's how they became architects. So they get it pretty quick once you show them a few things.
Great. We've got just a few minutes left. Let's see if we can get both of these questions in. First one is, are there instances where something does not need to meet the color contrast ratio? Placeholder text often does not abide to the color contrast ratio. If you do make it compliant, it starts to resemble pre-filled text for non-visually impaired users.
I'm going to let Debbie take that one.
Yeah, the only time that I've seen where you wouldn't apply the color contrast guidelines are to logos. So, if you have a logo on a page or a poster or something, the only time that would you would want to use the color contrast on the logos is how we use it in our work, where the logos show who the vendors are. So we do work with a lot of architects, and where they're showing the processes of the systems and the vendors that we work with for different systems. So we put the logo on there to show what vendor we're working with. So you have to be able to see the colors and who the logo is for. But that is typically the only time that you wouldn't apply the color contrast standards. Really, for any information that needs to be seen, you want to apply those standards. If it's just decorative, and it's only for decorative use, it's not conveying information, then you do not need to apply the standards.
Okay, great. And we have just a moment left, so I'm going to try to squeeze this last question in. Have you seen any positive changes in procurement of accessible third-party tech?
Yes, I have. We are making great leaps and bounds in that space. We've just started in the last year. It's a very important space, and I say it's very important because just from what I've seen and from when talking to people who work at USAA that have disabilities, and we look at our challenges, the majority of all of it is vendor based. So it's software products sites that we buy, tools that we bring in, that we've got to work with those vendors to get them into the WCAG standard. And that takes time, unfortunately, but it's worth it, because as contracts renew, we have to have conversations with vendors, roadmaps, get them to understand. And some vendors get it pretty quick, and some struggle along, some, kind of kick and fight. But yes, the procurement process is crucial to good employee accessibility, at least at our company, because we do buy a lot of products from other vendors.
Great. And with that, that puts us right at time. Debbie and Patrick, thank you so much for a great session. And thanks to everyone for attending. Enjoy the rest of the conference.